Welcome back, devs. Today we're cooking chili, specifically a quick beef chili. Normally, it takes 3 to 4 hours to develop that great depth of flavor that you get from a good pot of chili. But if you're like me, you don't have that kind of time or the patience to wait 3 to 4 hours, especially on a weeknight. Instead, I'm going to show you a couple of algorithms that are going to speed up our process so that we get the same amount of flavor in a fraction of the time. Let's cook like a dev. Start by slicing off the ends of a medium yellow onion, then cut it in half lengthwise and peel off the skin. Then grab a box grater and on the largest holes, go ahead and grate your onion. This is going to let it melt nicely into the background and it's going to cook faster. A great time-saving tip. Depending on your onion, you might get some parts that just won't grate, throw them away, and keep going. This is great for speed, but because we're rupturing a lot more of the cells, you can expect some tears. I'm not crying, you're crying. Alright, after you had a good cry, it's time to move on to the garlic. Same process, but in this case I'm using a microplane grater just because it's easier to grate garlic on this. If you don't have one, get one. It's one of the best tools in the kitchen, but watch out for those fingers. With our veggies out of the way, it's time to get our meat ready. Grab a large pot, in this case I'm using a 6-quart Dutch oven, and preheat that to medium heat for at least 5 minutes. We want this ripping hot. Next, we're going to grab our 2 pounds of ground beef and liberally salt and pepper the top. After 5 minutes are up, it's time to add our meat into the pan, no oil needed. If you're using 80-20 like I am, that's more than enough fat. If you're using more of a leaner ground beef, you might want to add a little bit of olive oil, but for the most part you should be okay. Make sure to pat it down as much as you can so that it's making full contact with the bottom of the Dutch oven, and it might help to get a little wooden spoon and push it down even further. We'll be using the wooden spoon throughout this whole process, so they might as well meet each other now. Don't forget to salt and pepper the top liberally like what we did on the other side, and we're going to let it go for 5 minutes. After 5 minutes, you should have a nice crust starting to form. That's exactly what we want. So we're going to go ahead and start breaking up the meat into small chunks. Just keep twisting and pressing until you get pebble-sized chunks, and we're going to let that go for another 5 minutes. Make sure to keep mixing throughout those 5 minutes just so that you can break the meat up into smaller and smaller chunks, and they'll start to fry in their own fat. Once those 5 minutes are up, grab a container and put your meat in there and set it off to the side. You should have a nice layer of fond building up at the bottom, which is all that brown stuff that's stuck to the pan. We want that. And on top of that, we're going to add our veggies and cook them off. Make sure to mix well here and try to scrape up some of that fond. Because the onions and garlic have a lot of moisture, especially since we grated them, it's going to make it easier to pull all that off. We're going to let this go for another 5 minutes. Oh, and don't forget to add a pinch of salt like I almost did. Make sure to mix that in to draw out more moisture. After those 5 minutes, we're going to go in with a can of diced tomatoes and green chilies. This is another time-saving tip because we don't have to spend a lot of time chopping up the tomatoes or the chilies, but they're going to add a great amount of flavor. After about 5 minutes, we're going to go in with our spice mix. 3 tablespoons of chili powder, 2 tablespoons of cumin, 1 tablespoon of oregano, and 1/4 or half a teaspoon of cayenne pepper, based on your preference. We're going to bloom these spices for about 30 seconds, and that just means mixing them over the heat and letting them warm up. After 30 seconds, we're going to go in with a tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce. Then we're going to add our ground beef back in and mix everything together. By this point, your house should be smelling delicious. Once your ground beef is nice and mixed in, we're going to go in with a cup of chicken broth. Then we're going to add a 16-ounce can of pinto beans and a 16-ounce can of red kidney beans with the bean juice intact. We want all of that extra starch to help thicken our chili. But we're not done with our thickeners just yet. In a small bowl, take 1 tablespoon of cornstarch and add 2 tablespoons of cold water. Then mix that around to form a slurry. We're going to take that slurry and add it to our chili and then bring everything up to a boil. Once your chili starts to boil, reduce the heat to medium-low and make sure to scrape the bottom to get any stuck bits off. We don't want burned chili after all. But we do want to reduce this liquid and let it thicken up. So once you bring it down to medium-low, let it come to a simmer and let it thicken for 15 minutes, making sure to come back every 5 or so minutes to give it a good scrape so nothing burns. After 15 minutes, we're left with beautifully thickened chili. Last step, get a teaspoon of lemon juice and mix that in. The acidity is going to help brighten up the chili and cut through all that fat. At this point, feel free to kill the heat and then give it a good taste. Adjust for salt and pepper. In my case, I needed some more pepper, but that's it. That's your chili. Quick and easy. To serve, grab yourself a big bowl and you can eat it as is if you want. Otherwise, you can top it with all the fixins. I like shredded cheese and tortilla strips, but you can adorn it with jalapenos, sour cream, whatever you want. It's your chili. Enjoy it. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you like it, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, follow on socials, do all that stuff. And remember, next time you're in the kitchen, cook like a dev.